to die. So they did not really breach this instruction and they did not return to the capital city. Question. From your home to Stung Min Chey location where you stayed, how long did it take to travel this stretch abroad? Response. We left at about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and by the time we got to Stung Min Chey, it already was dark. So the night fell when we got to Stung Min Chey, and we spent overnight there on the roadside. Some slept on the bed in the stalls in the market, and there was no more car or motorbike, so there was no traffic on the road except people who could really sleep on the roads if they wished. Question. Apart from the announcement that was telling people to leave city for 3 days, did you hear anything else? For example, were they told you to go to your hometown of your choice? Response. After some kilometers from Stung Min Chey, before we reached Chom Ka Dong, I heard through the loudspeaker that people could be allowed to go to their hometown if they wished to, but they were not allowed to return. They had to move forward and find the way to their hometowns. And we also heard that after 3 days, people would be allowed to return to the capital city, in particular those who were former soldiers, officials, teachers, doctors, because these people were needed to work in Phnom Penh after the city was finally reorganized. They told us that these people would be allowed to come back. However, to let them know whether they got the right people, they were asked to register their name. At that time, my father didn't manage to have his name registered. We saw a lot of people coming together in a crowd to have their names registered because they were hoping to be returned to Phnom Penh. The Khmer Rouge set a point where the names of individuals would be registered and people could be coming and turning themselves because they were afraid that they could not have their name registered on time and they would not be allowed to return to Phnom Penh after the 3 days.
Question. Did you observe those people who registered their names? Were they separated and were they taken somewhere else? Response. Those who registered their names did not proceed further with us. They were taken by another group. They also told their family members to proceed further and that once they could get their work back in Phnom Penh, they would go and get their family members, and they told their family members not to go far from the outskirts of Phnom Penh. And they were not allowed to proceed further with us. The Khmer Rouge soldiers put them aside. But that's all how I observed as the situation evolved. Question. Did you know those people who registered their names, were they public servants, were they lunar soldiers, or were they doctors or teachers? Or what did the Khmer Rouge soldiers really want? Or would they want staff for a particular ministry? Response. From what I knew, that is, I knew from those family members who did not have their family members registered, or those who have their husbands registered their names. Most of them were teachers and professors, and in one family, the wife said that her husband was a rickshaw driver, but he lied that he was a teacher in order to be returned to Phnom Penh. So I could say that those people who registered were those public servants of the old regime. Thank you. Question. While en route, did the Khmer Rouge provide you with food or medicine? That is, to you, your family members, and other city dwellers who left the city? Response. While en route during the evacuation, the Khmer Rouge soldiers did not give us any food, water, or shelter. We left without bringing sufficient food or belonging with us. So wherever we reached in late evening, we just rested there. We used tree leaves to cover the ground, and we slept on it. And the food that we brought with us for a 3-day period almost gone, and we did not cook rice anymore. We only cooked porridge so that we could save some rice. No medicine, no food, water, or shelter was given by the Khmer Rouge soldiers. Question. Along the road, and as many of your family members were public servants, did any of your family members try not to rush ahead so that they could return to Phnom Penh after 3 days? Response. My family members actually walked slowly in order to wait for my father and other siblings to catch up with us. But for the 3 days period, we did not see them, and we were not called to return after 3 days. We were only told that we needed to proceed further and that we would be greeted by Onka. And by that time, we did not know who Onka was. We thought it could be a non-governmental organization that would assist us. And while we reached Chamkadong, we rested there for 4 to 5 days. But the hope to return to Phnom Penh in 3 days had gone. Question. Did you observe the attitude of the Khmer Rouge soldiers? Did they actually intend to push you to go further or to allow you to stay at a particular location? Response. The Khmer Rouge soldiers did not allow us to stay. They always pushed us to go further. And another point during our journey is that although I was rather poor in Phnom Penh, I did never go without any food. So actually, during that period of time, I had a relapse after my baby delivery. I had no breast milk to feed my young baby, and I did not have medicine, and I did not also have milk. I could only afford water to feed my baby. Unfortunately, my baby died during that evacuation, and I did not even know what to do with my dead baby. I was instructed to bury my baby in the forest. It was like an animal. That was the first time for me that I had a baby, because I only married in 1975 and my baby died. Of course, if I were to live in Phnom Penh, I would afford to raise my baby, but I was forced to evacuate while I only just delivered my baby. Question: while en route after your baby died, did the Khmer Rouge cadres or soldiers confiscate any of your personal belonging or property? Response: a bit further after we left Chamkadong and I was not familiar with that area, there was a checkpoint, and then we were searched. They said that the feudalists needed to abandon all the personal belongings and properties there. We had to leave our belongings as requested by Angkar. And if we had all those belongings, we will be referred to as the feudalist. And if we did not leave their properties there, we will be accused of enemy of Angkar. We had some personal clothing and a can of medicine, as I concealed that medicine, but they saw it, so they took it away. And they said that this medicine belonged to the traitors and that we should not use it. And I actually only could conceal one tablet under the sleeve of my shirt. But if they actually roll down my sleeve, then they would find it and I would be accused of being a traitor. So they actually stripped off everything from us. My clothes, my gold. And they said that gold was no longer used and that we should give it to Angkar. Question: when you continued your journey further, how many days did it take for you before you reached your destination, that is a Trop village? Response: I could not say how many days after we left Chamkadong, but after we were stripped of our property, gold and medicine, about 1 kilometer further we were told that money was no longer circulated. So those people who were rich, who had their bags filled with money, they fell down and became unconscious because of disappointment. But for us, we did not have much money. And at that time, they gathered all the money and burnt it. So we, at that juncture, thought that we would die because we only relied on the money, and now they burnt the money, so we had no way of buying food or other stuff. And that we would face various consequences ahead. That's how we thought when we were confiscated of all those properties and money. And I did not know how many days before we reached Trop village. Question: after you left Chamkadong and until the time that you reached Trop village, did you unite with your other family members and your father? Response: my father and my husband were actually reunited with us in Chamkado, and then we went together as instructed by Angka in the direction they pointed us to go until we reached Prey Trop village. Question: what was the distance between Prey Trop village and Phnom Penh? And once you arrived at Prey Trop village, did the Khmer Rouge cadres at Prey Trop greet you warmly? Response: the chief of the Prey Trop cooperative, once we arrived, as we were the newly evacuated people, did not say anything. They actually organized us to live into various houses, and there were unit chiefs and there were militiamen who instructed us to divide into various groups and to live at various houses. But I did not know the name of the chief of the cooperative. Question: when you were at Prey Trop village, did you volunteer to go into that village, or were you instructed by the Khmer Rouge soldiers to go into that village? Response: that destination was determined by the Khmer Rouge soldiers. We, the evacuees, did not know where to head to, but the Khmer Rouge soldiers said that was Prey Trop village, and that all of us comrades had to stay there until Angka reorganized the areas. Then we would be sent further, but in the meantime, we had to stay at Prey Trop village. And we did not know about the location at all. And we did not have the right to protest against them. Question: can you tell us further, when you left Phnom Penh and until you arrived at Prey Trop village, did you observe any pagodas along the way? And if so, did you observe any monks in any of the pagodas? Response: while en route, I did not even see a monk. I did not see any monk in any pagoda that I walked past. It was so quiet. And of course, we were wondering what happened as well. As for my baby who died, I was looking for a monk to pray for the soul as well, but there was no monk in any of the pagoda. Question: did any of the evacuees rest in the pagoda where there was no monk? Response: at the pagodas along the road, there were of course people resting there, because while we were walking and when it was time to rest, we would rest in a pagoda if there was any. But then we would not allow to wander around. Even if when we were resting in a pagoda, we were monitored by armed people. Question: when you arrived initially at the Prey Trop village, you were placed to live with the base people. Did they register your details over there? For example, your occupation? Response: when we were in Prey Trop village, and about 1 week later, of course this is just an estimation, then a meeting was convened, And in that meeting, all the 17 April people who were deposited with the best people were called to the meeting. And we were asked that if any of us were soldiers or worked in Phnom Penh, or we were students, intellectuals. So each of us was asked the questions. And some of us who worked, they registered that they worked. So as I said earlier, initially there was a checkpoint where people were asked and questioned. And at that time, while we were asked questions in a meeting, my father did not attend as he was sick. But actually, we did not tell them that any of us worked, and we were asked whether we were Chinese or Vietnamese. Since we had a white complexion, we said that no, we were Khmer people. And some other people said that they worked at the Ministry of Interiors, or they were soldiers, or worked in a particular ministry. And one of my uncles, he was not a soldier, but in fact he worked in a royal palace. But he had a godson who was a soldier. And he said that I did not want to tell them that I worked in a royal palace, but I instead worked as a soldier so that I could go with my godson. And I told him not to do so because he did not know how to shoot a gun. But he said that that's okay, his godson would teach him to shoot. So he did tell them that he was a soldier, and so did his godson. And one of my cousins also said and registered himself as a soldier. And he said whether he wanted to go along with the uncle, and he said yes. I did not know how many people actually registered their names, because not only people from Pretrop village registered their names, there were people from other villages as well. I heard the people who registered the names said that it took them 3 days to register their names, and the total number of people who registered reached 60. And since there was no longer people registered, they stopped the process after 3 days. Question: did you know what happened to the 60 people who registered their names? Response: those 60 people who registered their names, after their registration, they were told to stay put in that location, and that they would be taken by a truck back to Phnom Penh to return to their respective previous employment. So actually they were waiting there, and they were not tied up or anything. There was no surprise. And 2 days later, we saw the military truck coming into the village. And then they put a mobile loudspeaker on the truck. And of course, upon hearing the announcement on the loudspeaker, I also came out to check. And they said that the truck will only transport those people who registered their names to return to Phnom Penh, because Phnom Penh had already been reorganized. So then they called the names from the list that they registered, and then the truck would leave. And I did not know what happens to them. A while later, another truck came, and then names were called to board the truck, and the truck left. And my father, who had a radio with him, And he always listened to the radio about the CIA or other events. And maybe they noticed that he had a radio, so my family was gathered up. And they said that although my family was not registered, that the family could go in our Lambretta. But the thing is, my father's Lambretta did not have petrol in it. So then they pour half a liter of petrol into the Lambretta, and we were instructed to follow the truck to go to Phnom Penh. That's what we were told. And at that time, we did not know what would happen to us. So we gathered all the family members and bought the Lambretta. And we followed the truck. And about half a way through, we ran out of petrol. So we were sitting and waiting in the Lambretta. And then we saw the truck that left returned. And we were asked why we did not proceed further. And we told them that the Lambretta ran out of petrol. And then we were told to stay put. They would return to pick up 3 more families from the village. And then they would tow our Lambretta. So we kept waiting. But fortunately, we saw a man, and I believe he was a best person. He was riding an ox cart, and he asked us questions. And he asked us what we were waiting for. And we said that we were waiting for a truck to pick up 3 more families from the village to return to Phnom Penh. He looked around, and then he whispered to my father that we should just disappear because those people were not sent to Phnom Penh, but they were killed. And then they gave us some rice cakes or akao in Khmer, and then he advised us to flee. But my father said, where could we flee, because we did not know the area. And then he told us the direction where we should go to head that way, and that we would not meet any soldiers. So we were scared. We only brought with us some light belongings, and we fled because we were afraid that if they saw us, they would kill us. So then we ran. And we ran until almost midnight, and then we arrived at a lake, and I did not know the name of that lake. Then my father said the water was deep, that we could not cross, and we had young children and elder mother, and he asked us to wait first, and then he would cross the river with the 2 young children. Counsel, civil party, please speak slowly so that the interpreter could render your testimony properly. Civil party, when we reached the Nekta Pramroi lake, my family could not cross the lake, so we had to take turn to cross the lake. And I had a younger sibling sitting on the neck of my father, and there was another sibling on his back. My husband was carrying his niece, and my sister were carrying 2 of her children. But I was afraid of the water because I never touched the water before. So I waited together with my grandmother. When just before my husband and father was about to cross the lake, we saw the flashlight, and we saw people shouting that there were people at the lake and that they should rush to check out. And then we heard sporadic fighting. When the flashlight was here and there near the lake, and my husband said that they had to leave, and that I should hide myself with my grandmother. So then my husband managed to hide us in the bush. At that time, upon hearing the fighting, my grandmother, who was more than 70 years old, was shocked, and unfortunately she died. So we could not leave her in the open. We dragged her to the area near the bank of the lake. So my husband and the rest crossed the river while I was hiding. And at that time I was so shocked that I fainted near the dead body of my grandmother, and I did not know what happens to my husband and father and the rest who crossed the river, who crossed the lake. And about 2 a.m. in early morning, I was woken up by the Jew. Actually, my husband returned and said that the rest of the family members returned, but that we could not cross the lake. And if we decided to cross, we would be killed, and that we had to go back. At that time, the dead body of my grandmother was left in the bush. My husband and I had to return through the forest. Thank you. Question. After you left the dead body of your grandmother, where did you go? And could you please make your response rather briefly and precisely? Response. When we left the dead body of my grandmother, we there walked only during the night time. So we walked for 7 nights, and my body was scratched because we walked through the thick forest, and my intended destination was Kong Risay in Kampong Speu. It was the native village of my father-in-law, and my father-in-law was the best person in that village, and we hoped that we would feel better when we arrived there. So we walked across the forest for 7 nights, and we did not have anything to eat but the leaves of the trees or the wild fruits, and we drank water from the creek. We walked until we reached Prey Krolanj village, Kong Pisay district in Kampong Speu province. Even when we arrived in the village, my husband did not want me to go into the open, so he asked me to hide myself in the forest, and he would go to meet his father, and a while later he returned with a black cloth and tie a thong, and he had a red scarf for me to cover my face, and he took me to meet with his father at his house. Question. Can you tell us the name of that village and how long did you stay in that village? Response. The village name was Prey Krolanj, Popel Sub-District, Kong Pisay District, Kampong Speu Province. I stayed there for only 5 days. The reason that we stayed for 5 days because Angka was searching for the 17 April people. They conducted the search throughout the village, and they listed all the 17 April people. My father-in-law hid myself in the mosquito net, and he gave food to me while I was in the mosquito net as well. And after a while, he said that he could no longer assist us. So after 5 days, we show ourselves up before the Khmer Rouge Angka, and we said that we were the evacuees from Phnom Penh and that we stayed at the house of Long Man, and we did not reveal that he was my father-in-law, and that we would go wherever Angka wished us to go.
Question. After telling the Khmer Rouge about this, where did the Khmer Rouge take you to? Response. After the Khmer Rouge learned that we were all the 17th of April people, we were arranged to stay in one place, and then we transferred to Sngok Mountain in Kampong Speu. They told us that we were the 17th of April people, and to make sure the Angka trusted us, we had to be tempered at that mountain. After we were completely tempered, Angka would then recognize us and allowed us to continue working. The President thanks you, Council, and thank you, Madam Civil Party. It is now appropriate time for adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn for 20 minutes. The next session will resume by 10 to 11. Court officer is now instructed to assist Madam Civil Party during the adjournment.
សូមជើញក្រោកឈរ